Hello, guys. A very good evening to a very good evening to all of you. I am Ravi, and I am going to help my team take you through the analysis of slot three of CAT 2022 that happened today from 4:30 to 6:30. So, with me right now is Shipku sir, and along with me we are going to have Nikun sir, Ak sir, and GP sir also joining in a while. Shipku sir, if you can just switch on your camera and uh, mic, I'll just put you onto the stream. So, hi Shipku.
Hi, Ravi. Hi,
Yeah.
everyone. So I am
Yeah.
on the road, Ravi. So the paper was interesting, to say the least. Uh, so uh, maybe I think you can lead me with the questions. Then I'll will kind of make my comments.
So I think I am also waiting for comments to come because there has to be a 20-second lag from what we do live and what goes on to YouTube. I think I'm waiting for the comments. By all of you who have taken slot three and also probably slot one and slot two and are watching this analysis live, what do you think of what happened with you in the slot three? Please let us know so that we also, the people who have taken slot three, our mentors who have taken slot three, will be able to address any issues that you might have faced or uh, okay, so basically, one idea, basically, Shipku, that has come up across all the people I've heard is I think the paper became difficult slot after slot today. Would you agree to that? Having seen what happened in slot one and having heard from people who took slot one.
It is likely, Ravi, because I think if I compare with or at least what I sense was there in the first slot to what we saw in the last slot, I think there's definitely been a gradual increase. Maybe I'm not sure about the verbal part. Was it as tough? Because it's very difficult to judge on the verbal. But generally, the sense that we got for LRDI as well as for Quant in the slot three definitely has been that it's a little more tougher than the previous slots.
So I think where DILR, what I've heard from you and both asks is that if ऐसा कोई set होता है which is absolutely impossible, then the paper is easy to solve because you know what to leave exactly. I think
Uh,
that choice was not there in slot three, which would probably end up making DILR tougher. So
so I think the choice that people had in LRDI in the last slot, I think probably, I mean, no, even for those who would have picked up the easier question, it still would have been a challenge to go beyond solving 10 questions. So that's my view, that's my perspective, and which is where I think that uh, going beyond 30 marks was not easy in this LRDA.
right. So one other thing that has come up really very often about this slot is that Quant was uh, above above the threshold, the level of difficulty that what we expect. Quant was more like CDC 13 and CDC 12 instead of being like CDC 15 is what I'm getting to hear. Your take on that?
Yeah, I think it was more like the CDC 13 and CDC 12, right? Definitely. Because questions were, but I think there were not too many questions that are conceptually very difficult, but they were, it's not as if, that those, there were definitely about 8 to 9 questions that were standard, conventional, not too much of brain to be used questions. But there were a few questions that were a little lengthy to read and solve, and there were a couple of questions that looked a little new. So, but the moment you go deeper into it, it would have been a easy paper to, I mean, easy question to solve. So, I think personally, um, a good student would have attempted about 15 odd questions. Uh, I mean, somebody who has been clocking a 19, 97, 98 percentile throughout would have been stranded around 12 or 13 uh, attempts, I guess.
I have with me Ak sir also, and GP sir has also just about joined here. So Ak sir, what is your first impression? And GP, after Ak's, I would also ask you about what is your first impression. Ak's.
My first impression, Ravi, is very simple. The verbal ability part, the 8 questions were not difficult. They looked easy also, and hopefully they are easy. But the RC, I think these guys made a template out of the types of difficult questions. Even though the passages were easy, I think because of the way the questions were made, probably RC becomes a little tricky. That is one. DILR is a 0-1 game kind of things. Those people who did that DI set, the ages of males and females ka set, I think that was very, very straightforward and easy. People would have got about 12 to 15 marks, but most people missed out. Well, I've been speaking to some of the students also in the last 20 minutes, 30 minutes. The other three, which were which are not difficult but not easy either, I think it's a zero-sum game. People get 0 or people get 5 into 3, 15 types. Quant, I'll completely go with what Shivku said. Attempting 13 to 14 questions itself is a pretty good attempt and get about 97. GP is there next?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me, Ravi?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Yeah,
ठीक है.
yeah, we can.
ठीक है. So broadly speaking, English का I will agree with Ask completely. कोई मेरे को भी ऐसा, it was not a difficult paper. Verbal I felt 5 out of 8 was doable. 2 parajumbles, 2 summary, and 1 that new question type. And 5 were definitely doable, and up to 6 could have been done. So 5 or 6 is what I would look at in that particular section. इंग्लिश में प्रॉब्लम यही था, पैसेज आसान थे पढ़ने में, एक आध पैसेज में इट इज पॉसिबल समवन माइट स्ट्रगल अ बिट, बट वंस यू वेंट टू द क्वेश्चन, वो एक्सेप्ट वगैरह वाला जो होता है ना, ऑल ऑफ दीस फॉलोइंग एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा, जो लास्ट 2-3 साल से हो रहा है, दोस काइंड ऑफ क्वेश्चन वर देयर व्हिच कैन बी अ लिटिल कंफ्यूजिंग एट टाइम्स. So out of those 16 questions of English RT, maybe about 10-11 is what one would attempt correctly on the higher side. Okay, so I would say English was by and large a decent paper, not difficult. DILR, I felt, and that data set of ages, I would say शायद वो सबसे आसान सेट था पेपर का. Not only this slot, but probably across the 3 slots. If you have missed out that male-female data set shown, then you have probably missed the easiest data set of this paper among the between the 3 slots. Okay, so वो एक मेरे को लगता है. Secondly, the DILR, I felt that most students will struggle and will not be able to do more than 2 sets because there were 2 DI and the 2 LR sets for cases. So you'll have to make cases to get to the answer. I'm not saying that it cannot be done, but they will take time. And under exam pressure, a 10-12 minute set becomes a 15-16 minute set very easily. Okay? So this is why I would think कि शायद 2 sets से ज़्यादा नहीं कर पाएगा. The data set of computer science, non-computer science shown AIML subjects to 7. Okay? So the way I went through the paper was I first attempted that male-female wala, that Eastman color, that blue pink graph. It took me about 7 odd minutes or so. Okay, and actually I made the complete table. Despite that, it took me 7 minutes. So if you can do without the table, probably you can do it a little faster also. Okay. Then I went on to this AIML wala. वहाँ पे choices helped me. So I was done with 2 sets in about 20, 22, 23 minutes. If you looked at the choices, it was easily doable. If you don't look at the choices, it will take you time. And then in the remaining time, I went through the remaining 2 sets. While I did not solve any one of them completely, I got them to a level जहाँ पे वो दिख गया कि हाँ हो जाएगा, आप छोड़ सकते हैं. So my guess is doing more than 3 sets in this paper was definitely not on the cards. Most of the students will end up doing, I'm including good students also. Most of the good students will end up doing only about 2 sets or so. So I would say 10, अगर 2 set कर लिए हैं तो अच्छा attempt है. 1 set is the bare minimum, and 1 set will probably get you a 80 percentile plus. If not the 85, 80, 85 के बीच में आ जाएगा. If you do only 5 questions, you should be safe in terms of sectional cutoff.
So it sounds like slot one to my ears. That one
Okay.
set should be able to take you through the sectional cutoffs of most of the colleges, while the
Yeah.
second set, if done completely, should be able to give you that 95, 98, 99th percentile in the
Yeah,
paper.
two sets you'll possibly be close to 99 percentile. You do another couple of questions, you'll possibly be 99.5 plus. Okay. Okay. And now when we come to the Quant had about 7-8 questions which were sitters. मुझे समझ कुछ सवाल को देख के समझ नहीं आया था ये डाला भी क्यों है सवाल इतने आसान थे. Okay. So there were about 7-8 such questions. However, beyond that, if you started looking at the questions, you suddenly found that they were lengthy, they were time consuming. I felt, though I did not count the number of questions, but I felt that algebra was on the higher side as compared to arithmetic. And उसकी वजह से वो जो था question में time भी लग रहा था. And so what that would have meant was going beyond 13, 14 questions would be a challenge. So I would say the range of quant attempts for decent students would be 7-8 to 14-15. I would say 12-13 would be a very good attempt in this paper because this was a lengthy paper. The questions were lengthy to solve. So on an average, if I cut down those sitters, those 7-8 sitters, जो शायद एक 1.5 minute में you'll be able to solve. The remaining question would easily take you 2.5 to 3 minutes each.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So with me, I also have Nikun sir with me from Kolkata, who has also taken slot 3. Sir, what do you think uh, was the game in quant? How was it different from the previous years, or how similar?
See, I think the the breakup of quant was quite similar, though I felt arithmetic had couple of questions lesser compared to the last year, and might be couple of more algebra questions this time, as GP was saying. And to me, the paper became a little more difficult than last year because I think arithmetic, usually students find arithmetic the easiest and the most scoring. But I think here, there I felt there were not too many easy questions in arithmetic. For example, even time in work, questions were a little complicated. So I think anything 10 plus in QA, 10 plus attempts would be a good attempt. Somebody eyeing at a 99 percentile needs to perhaps look at a 12 to 13 attempts. So yes, early 30s would be a safe 99 percentile score.
So
I
let's
think
look
in
at.
LRDI, in LRDI, the basic challenge here was patience. So if anybody would have easily cracked the age question of DI. So in 5-7 minutes, that would have been done. The problem was with the second set. With all the other three were time taking. None of them could have been done in 10 minutes. So anybody who had patience and spent 15 to 20 minutes on the second set would have been able to crack the second set. But there again is the issue that most of us would not have that patience. Students would have kept juggling across the remaining three caselets, and that, to me, two complete caselets in LRDI is a super attempt here. So anybody getting 10 questions correct is a brilliant attempt. But I think I would go by the numbers given here. A late 20s, 27, 28 would be a top score in LRDI. In English, I think, as you just put on the slide, Ravi, two passages were easy. So the passage on software and the passage on Chicago, I think number 1 and 2 on your slide, as you
Yeah.
rightly said, were easily manageable. So though the questions were inferential and disagree and agree with the author and accept questions were also there, too many this time. Usually you would not find too many disagree, accept, agree, accept, which is normally not the case. Plus you have 2-3 questions on keywords in the passages also, I think, which also usually you would not find too many such questions in RC. So I think that perhaps would have made the RC a little more difficult. But all in all, I would not rate English tougher than last year because para jumble, surprisingly, were quite easy. As in, the sentences were easy to read and not very long in nature. So I think all the three para jumbles you could easily get the links. So though they were non-MCQ, students would have attempted it. But here I think 2 out of 3 were easily manageable.
So I think by gauging by what all of you are telling me, it seems like to get started in any of the sections is not difficult. It's easier. It's easy to get 4 to 5 questions, 6 questions correct in all the sections. When it comes to DILR, about 5 questions, it is easy to get. That means the 80th percentile mark will probably go up by a mark or two as compared to last year. While after that, every question will lead to a steep increase in the percentile.
That's absolutely correct, Ravi.
Right. So, yeah. So, Aks, would you like to take up the passages of VARC one by one?
See, frankly speaking, all the 4 passages were a very easy read, like we said previously also. What actually is the issue with probably what Cat is trying to do is to make the question difficult, they are giving you double negatives. None of the following are true except. All of them are not the inferences except, such kind of questions. I think about 6, 7 of them. Anybody who can interpret the question correctly, frankly, it was not that difficult, but we'll have to figure it out whether how students should have done it. But I completely agree with Nikunj. The para jumble, even the para summary, and actually even the 2 new types of questions with the para completion were pretty much doable. And I think about 5 questions out of 8, there is a very good chance that a decent student at 99 plus percentile can get correct. So that's my take on that.
So, Shivku, in VARC, out of 16 questions, out of the 4 passages, 16 questions, do you think it is pretty much possible to get about 8 to 9 questions for a good student? 8 to 9, 8 to 10 questions, correct?
Yeah. I think if I look at all the 4 sets, right, 4 passages, every passage had about two questions that were doable. Okay, so I think someone who has attempted all the 4 passage, and if he's a decent student, which means getting a 95 percentile in RCs always, or 95 percentile in verbal, I think he should have got about 8 to 10 questions definitely right in the RCs.
And here comes the $1 million question. As you pointed out, one thing. Okay, was there enough time to spend time on all 24 questions in the VARC section, or was it like 3 passage karo, 8 VA karo?
Personally, merely I was a little short of time. Okay, so I couldn't attempt all the 24. I was two attempts short of that. So I guess for somebody who's been very comfortable, right, doing a lot of RCs, maybe they would have just hit it on time. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people come back and say, I couldn't do 1 passage, but I could attempt about 20.
See, Ravi, I think out of the difficult 2 passages, students would have generally been a little skipping on that. So, might the Orientalism and or the biotechnic, usme se ek na ek passage somebody would have perhaps, rushed through it and not wasted too much time there. Then they would have got adequate time for the 8 VA questions. And I think for the first time, this time in English, I felt VA was very much manageable, and the words used were easy, and they were not too verbose in nature. So even the summary questions, they were short in nature. So usually I remember there are 2-line, 3-line statements in parajumbles, or even summary options sometimes go into a couple of statements. So I think from that perspective, verbal ability this time was the surprise package. So here, if students could have actually, scored well, then I think a score of 40 plus was on the cards.
So basically, about 4 to 5 questions from verbal ability and 8 to 9 questions from RCs were up for grabs, and a total overall of about 14 to 16 questions were manageable, and a net score of about 13 to 14 questions correct would do the trick.
Yeah, anything above 40 might be early 40, so 42 ke aaspaas might be. So.
Right. So that brings us to DILR. I spoke with 3 different people about DILR, but before I take it to our mentors, guys, I want to hear from you कि आप पे क्या बीती है ये DILR में, क्योंकि every time I keep getting very interesting comments about DILR especially, right? So when I spoke to the different people gave different opinions about DILR because किसी के पेपर में पिंक एंड वो DI वाला सेट पहले था, किसी के पेपर में वो लास्ट था. So that is why probably, but all of them have unanimously agreed that this particular set, male female graph, the one that was DI, was the one which was easy and which could give you all 5 questions correct. Which could give you all 5 questions correct, while the others were not easy to leave, easy to solve. Aks?
See, I have a interesting take on DILR. While it is probably difficult, but unlike last year and many of the sets, I don't know slot 1, slot 2 really, all the 4 sets that came in slot 3 were actually doable. The DI set that you're talking about, Ravi, very much doable if they attempted it to start with. A lot of people I met and talked to did not attempt that also. Very unfortunate. The set where you are making a bet of 1 rupee or 2 rupee, that also had only few ideas, few cases, and if you did the cases correct, you would have been able to crack it. But if you don't crack it, you will get 0 in that almost. Not really 0, maybe less marks.
All in or all out kind of a set.
Yeah, it's a kind of. And the third one, even that 0, 1, 2, 3, where we are talking about the number of cases in a locality of a city, and total was 43. It is again simple numerical cases, 2 cases possible. If you get the case right, you get all 5 correct at least. You get it wrong, maybe you'll get only 2 correct out of the 5. The only set which was more lengthy, according to me, was that ratio set on, computer science and non-computer science candidates of AI and ML. That's also doable, but if you add something like 15-20 minutes. So here is my take on it. Probably Nikon, Shivko and GP will come back. Here it is like at a 50-60 percentile level, the score will be around 8-10. But the moment it scores become 12-13 or 15, I think the percentile will jump up. And at 18-20, the percentile will jump up to 85-90 percentile even. In that sense, it's like a 0 all in game kind of things, a poker, 0-1 kind of a game. Their very good students would have probably cracked all 3 sets or even 3.5 sets in this particular paper. Like GPS said, the AI and ML set, the CS, non-CS, from the choices he could get them. If somebody did remember all the analysis that GP has done or we have done and remembered how to do it in the choices, that could have been a fantastic game. Otherwise, I think the score would be very, very low.
I think many of the students are asking the same, whether there are 2 cases in the COVID cases, because
yes,
COVID
there are 2 cases.
Right.
Yeah, 2 cases in COVID. The COVID was actually, it all depends on which one you actually spend more time. So perhaps any student would have spent 20 minutes on either COVID or computer science or games. Good student would have cracked it. So a good student for whom LRDI is his strength would have definitely cracked 2 cases here. But the only caveat here is he had to be patient enough to have spent that extra 5-10 minutes. Because इसमें क्या है कि the moment you solve the graph question, a lot of confidence sets in. The moment you are through with the graph question in 5 minutes, you know that I have that extra 5 to 10 minutes for my second set. You see, so in that perspective, मेरे को लग रहा है that 2 cases. So I think Aks has a valid point. That might be till 80-85 percentile, the cutoffs of DILR will be fairly low. But when I go to a 98-99, I might see a bit of a surge in the cutoffs because the best students would have cracked 2 cases here.
Easily.
I think where it brings us is, as I am just reiterating myself, all friends, that, because there were generally in papers of DILR, you see there is one straight reject kind of a set ki ye dekh ke ye to karna hi nahi. But I think finding that one set in this paper was very difficult, as in all of the sets, they were not familiar either, but they were not difficult either. all of the sets you will only know कि कितना पानी में हो after getting into the set. So that is what might have curbed someone from going beyond 2 sets, and even the better students from going beyond the
इसमें
2.5 3
Ravi,
sets.
Ravi, let us not forget that the
Yeah.
graph question also was not an immediate selection. See, in hindsight, we can all say that's a very easy question. But given that there were 4 graphs and you have to scroll not only top to bottom but also right to left, there would have been a lot of students who would have started with the LR ones and not having started with the graph-based questions. So I think
In
from
fact,
that perspective,
Nikunj,
let us not forget. So we
in
are
fact,
taking it
Nikunj,
for granted that everybody will solve the graph question.
no, in fact, Nikunj, I completely agree with you. In fact, I have spoken to so many students. Most of them did not see the graph itself. Yeah, GP, you are saying something.
And Aks and Nikunj, while I agree with you, yeah, I'm saying while both of you are absolutely right, but यहीं पे तो हम बच्चों को हमेशा बोलते थे कि क्वेश्चन पेपर बटन खोलो. That if you open the question paper, you will see all the 4 graphs together, and you realize there's nothing great about that stupid graph. And the second rule I always have for myself is, जितना ज़्यादा जगह लेता है उतना आसान है. The more space it is taking in terms of graph. Now the only reason they have given 4 graphs, they could have easily given that data in the form of table to make it look ugly, to make it look difficult. And these are things which we have told students multiple times, at least question paper button they should have used. Okay. For me, this was the 4th graph, the 4th data set, this one. My first one was at AIML. Then I had the games and tournament, games wala. Then I had COVID, and this was the 4th one. If you are on the question paper, you will pick it up immediately. If you are on the platform and not on the question paper, you will not pick it up immediately.
I think the worst part is though it is difficult to get beyond 2 sets. If I compare to what happened in the first slot today, well, second slot, the talk that came was DILR was slightly easier than the first slot. But what happened in the first slot is there was no question of DI. So many people go into the paper thinking कि यार एक DI तो आएगा उसको तो करके ही आएंगे. I think in the first slot there was no set which was straightforward as such कि आपके 15 नंबर पक्के हैं. So I think there is a chance while scaling this, even if you get those 10 questions correct, your scale score may end up being 28 instead of 30 for slot 3 in DILR.
रवि,
Yeah.
जैसे कि मेरे तुम्हारे साथ most of the time होता है, we are in the minority who say कि यार DILR मुश्किल नहीं था, I'll stick my neck out again and say that. See, please look at this paper again. Okay,
Yeah.
4th set for me, that was the 4th set, the male female, that graph. I think it was a straightforward thing. Worst case, 10 minutes you will solve it. The AIML wala data set, computer science, non-computer science, if you look at the choices of the first and 5th question, you will get the answers to both of them, and you will have solved the complete set, another 10 minutes. So theoretically speaking, if you look at the choices and if you do the right thing in the set, 25 minutes, 2 sets comfortably you would have done. Okay, 25 minutes, 5-6 minutes to go through the paper, and about 7-8 minutes for one set, and 8 to 10 minutes for the second set. And then you have 15 minutes to do the third set also. So theoretically, I would say 3 sets were doable for a good student. But there were 2 things to it. One, you had to pick out the DI set of AI, and secondly, in the AIML one, you had to use the choices. If you don't use the choices, then doing more than 2 sets will be a challenge.
So this is a paper where
there are 2 big ifs here, GP. One is the question paper thing, and 2 is using choices. See, there are 3 non-MCQs in that set. That itself puts you off. So अभी आपको अगर choices use करना है question 1 and 5 का, somebody who's really an expert in LRDI would have been able to crack those things. Because I would still go ahead and say that LRDI was on the difficult side.
Yeah, that's on.
So anybody getting 10 attempts correct, 30 score will be a 99.5 percentile here.
Right. So that
I think I completely agree with Nikunj on that. Anybody who's done about 2 questions, I think 2 sets completely क्योंकि पहले वाले जो डीआई सेट में शायद गलतियां होने का स्कोप कम है, और एक और सेट अगर टाइम, सो आई थिंक 32 मिनट्स तो बिताया होगा टू डू 2 सेट्स, 25 मिनट में नहीं होंगे जीपी। तो इन दैट सेंस आई फील
शिवको, माय कंडीशन इज वेरी
हाँ
क्लियर, तुमने चॉइसेस यूज किया है कि नहीं किया
हाँ
है? मैं बहुत
हाँ
क्लियरली
वो
बोल रहा हूँ, अगर
चॉइस,
चॉइस यूज किया है तो भैया 3 सेट हो जाएंगे, चॉइस नहीं यूज किया तो 2
हाँ
ही सेट होंगे, ठीक है?
वही।
एंड कप
So I think anybody who has done about 2 sets, 10 questions, I think you've done.
couple of students have talked to me who have used the choices also. 8-9 सवाल पे आ जाएगा, 9 question will give you 90. Yeah, no doubt about it. All I'm saying is it is not as difficult as people have made it out to be. That is all I'm saying. If you are willing to look at the choices.
Right.
चलो जब रिस्पॉन्स शीट आएगा तब फिर से बात करेंगे सेट पे.
Yeah. So that brings us to quantitative ability. शिवकू सर, ये आपको थोड़ा आपके टाइप का पेपर टाइप लगा लोगों को कि मेहनत है घुमाया जा रहा है.
रवि, this is a kind of paper I don't like क्योंकि मेहनत करा रहा था कुछ सवालों में. जुगाड़ तो लग गया, जुगाड़ कईयों में लगा, ऐसा नहीं कि नहीं लगा, बट फिर भी यार वो यानी कि this was not a paper I enjoyed.
So I think you would have very well.
You were never stable in the paper. You never felt that the going was good. You know, after
Yes,
one question,
absolutely.
out of the roadblock coming.
No, Nikunj, the way I look at this paper, and GP, we also discussed this, that arithmetic tha, but it was not that arithmetic everybody could solve. You know, maybe one simple interest ka easy tha, time and work ka easy tha, but सबके लिए मेहनत करना पड़ रहा था. इवन एवरेज का क्वेश्चन एक मेहनत करना पड़ता था, एक तो इजी था, एक मेहनत करना पड़ता था. The modern math question was not that easy. I mean, it is possible for a very good quant student, but for not for a 80 percentile, 85, 95 percentile student. Similarly, geometry and mensuration, जुगाड़ मेथड आप ही का यूज करना पड़ेगा for that circle वाला. P&C का एक क्वेश्चन था ना.
I'm trying to recollect. I can't place that question. Maybe I missed it somewhere. But ठीक है.
The point is this particular
का वो क्वेश्चन था, वो 4 डिजिट्स को अरेंज करके उनका
1 1 2 का एवरेज बनाना, the number of is not easy at all. 12 question, 12 numbers. So the point is it was not so obvious, each one of these things, and that is the reason why this particular paper is tougher according to me than it is made out to be. Not more than 33 marks are required for getting a 99 percentile in that sense.
So 11 to 12 questions net correct, 10 to 11.
Yes.
10 to 11 net correct is a very good attempt.
12 questions attempt इस पेपर में
बिल्कुल
more than
lengthy
14
paper.
15 is very difficult.
Correct. Paper itself is difficult to, I mean, number of questions to attempt itself is difficult, Ravi. Hence, 10 net or even 11 net max will be more than sufficient to get a 99 percentile.
I think, DP sir, if you would have taken the slot 1, you would have sailed through it like a hero. एकदम champ की तरह. क्योंकि slot 1.
Yeah, इस पेपर में ना what Nikunj said ना, I think that is the key thing. ये momentum बनी नहीं रहा था इस पेपर में.
Right. So I think when we compare it with CAT 2021, CAT 2021, when the results came out, right, it struck us with a surprise where 80th percentile was only 4 questions, 12 marks.
Yes.
Right. We were expecting around at least 14-15 marks, but 80th percentile came around 12 marks. Do you think similar things will happen in terms of the cutoff? Was starting a trouble in this paper for quant, or going after those 20 marks, getting beyond those trouble? Sir?
I think start was also trouble. So I don't see the 80th percentile going up.
Okay.
Ravi, in this paper ना problem यही था कि while there were sitters, you had to leave those other questions to come to those sitters.
Right.
Okay? The other questions were doable but would be time consuming. So if you are okay leaving, तुमको 7-8 सवाल दिख जाएंगे, ठीक है. But अगर तुम, but if you get stuck with any question, you will struggle. You will not be able to reach the end of the paper. So in general, questions were a little lengthy, I would say.
But were the questions easy to leave? कि देख के ही मतलब पता चल जाता है, ये नहीं.
नहीं, I would not say they were easy to leave. Many questions were tempting, and which is why those roadblocks were happening for students also. Okay.
All right.
Yeah. But there were 7-8 questions which are absolute sitters. What was that question asked? Nikon, you would remember 15,000 odd rupees का था. How many 500 rupee notes can be there, ना?
वो तो बहुत बेकार, मुझे समझ में नहीं आया कैसे करूं उसको.
वो maximum number of 500 rupee notes.
हाँ, maximum पूछा था ना?
हाँ, maximum number of 500.
उसमें कोई मतलब ऑप्शन नहीं दिया उसमें. ऑप्शन तो फिर जुगाड़ बैठ जाता.
वो शायद 17 है उसका शायद आंसर. I don't remember.
क्योंकि नोट 100 थे, ओवरऑल नोट्स वाज 100, so you have to keep that in mind also.
हाँ, correct.
ठीक है, तो इशू वही है कि लगता है होगा और होके शुरू होना होता है फिर.
बहुत लोग का.
It looked a very tempting question. मतलब 3-4 मिनट वेस्ट भी किया उस क्वेश्चन पे.
अच्छा वो नोट्स वाला क्वेश्चन में निकुंज.
Which one?
Are you talking about the notes वाला question जहाँ पे 3-4 मिनट वेस्ट किया? नहीं, वो you start with assume there are 30 500 rupee note and 1 250, and then you have to increase it by 69. So for every 500 you can exchange 500 rupee notes. So net increase will be 4. So you do 17 of those, it will increase by 68. Right? And then you.
अगर आप 17 notes करोगे, so you have 8,300 rupee notes. So it's not adding up to 15,000 then.
No. See, you have initially you start with 30 and 1. 30 500 rupee notes and 1 250 rupee note. Okay? So for every 500 that I exchange with 500 rupee notes, the net increase is 4.
Yeah.
So you swap 17 of them, you will increase the number by 68. So it will reach 99. And then 1 500 rupee note you exchange with 250 notes. So the answer I think it will be 13 होगा या 12 होगा ऐसे कुछ.
My point is वहाँ पे ये काम करवा रहे थे सब जगह.
काम तो करवा रहे थे, उसमें डाउट नहीं है.
ठीक है.
Tough. I mean, even the time and work questions were not very easy.
Yeah. थोड़ा पेनफुल थे.
वो एस्केलेटर वाला क्वेश्चन फिर भी ठीक था.
टाइम एंड वर्क वाला एस्केलेटर स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड लगा मुझे. टाइम एंड वर्क को भी स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड लगे थे मुझे.
But I think sir,
maybe it is my comfort with the numbers that you are
टाइम एंड वर्क में वो जो दो आदमी को काम कराना था, उसमें काफी मेहनत हो रही थी.
सर एस्केलेटर
नहीं परसेंटेज में काम तो जल्दी हो जाता है.
एस्केलेटर
परसेंटेज
इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है.
इम्पोर्टेंट परसेंटेज और 120 यूनिट को.
एस्केलेटर स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड था, ये इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है सर. इंपॉर्टेंट ये है कि वो एस्केलेटर था. लोग
Ravi, what are you saying?
एस्केलेटर का जो क्वेश्चन है, इवन इफ इट इज इजी,
एस्केलेटर था, ये बात तो सही है.
एस्केलेटर
लोगों ने एस्केलेटर देख के छोड़ दिया होगा.
That might have happened with many of them.
I agree with you.
Even geometry, usually in CAD geometry, out of 4-5 questions, 2-3 are absolute easy. इस बार एक क्वेश्चन इजी था. वो ज्योमेट्री कम टाइम स्पीड डिस्टेंस जो था, आई थिंक
राइट एंगल ट्रायंगल वाला, इक्विलेटरल एंड राइट एंगल ट्रायंगल,
वो ठीक था. बट अदरवाइज जो वो ओवरलैपिंग एरिया का था, दैट वाज आल्सो नॉट अ वेरी इजी वन. आई डोंट नो वो जीपी शायद समझ में नहीं आया वो क्वेश्चन.
ओवरलैपिंग एरिया वाला जुगाड़ से होता है.
वो आपका कोई
पेपर आएगा तब पता
चक्कर लगा होगा उसमें.
हाँ सॉरी,
वो 32 पाई का कुछ आंसर था, उसमें कुछ जुगाड़ लगा होगा जरूर. आई एम अज्यूमिंग दैट
नहीं बिल्कुल जुगाड़ से ही होता है वो।
कोई 3 4 5 कोई 5 12 13 नहीं था पेपर में।
नहीं इस बार नहीं था 5 12 13।
हमारे में था सर, स्लॉट 1 had 5 12
एक
13।
से 12 16 20 आया था एक जगह।
So I think that brings us to the overall analysis of this. So as compared to as compared to CAT 2021, we feel slot 3 of this year is probably a question tougher if you look at the overall game. That the reason is VRC is more or less there. DILR is probably a question tougher and the QA is a question tougher. So what it would end up meaning is that if 97 marks as a raw score, as a scaled score, mind you, got a 99 percentile last year, that would be a raw score about 93, 94, 92, 93 in a difficult slot. This slot up in the 99th percentile as per our mentors is expected to be sub 95 marks, so there's somewhere in the range of 92 to 95 marks is where we expect the 99th percentile to fall for this particular slot. In terms of the raw score, mind you, the scores, when scaling happens, the scores may increase because this slot appears to be tougher than the other 2 slots that happened in the morning and the afternoon. But when it comes to the lower percentile cutoffs also are bound to go a little lower than last year, sir. Because 95, I guess last year the overall cutoff for 95 was around 72 to 73 marks. This year we are saying it is sub 70. And also 90 was about 61 to 63 marks. So this year we are expecting it to be about 55 to 58. Yes, this is raw score for this particular slot. When scaling happens, your marks will change.
0.7 meters. 0.8
Right?
meters.
So at all
At 80
percentile levels,
percentile, I think Ravi, might be we could not look at a much of a difference, but at 90 95 I think I'll go with you in terms of the fall. It will be similar fall compared to a 99.
so I think 90 से 85 में इतना फॉल नहीं होगा सर, 7 8 10 नंबर का फॉल तो नहीं होना चाहिए. 90 से 85 will be probably a fall of 5 marks. 52 to 53 should be good enough here.
Last time to fall tha, if you go by the last year cutoffs,
Yeah.
85 or 90 में there was a difference of I think 8-9 marks.
Correct.
मुझे लगता है कि ट्रेंड कोई बहुत डिफरेंट होगा नहीं. So I mean, we could actually cut paste that -1, -2 throughout the slots.
Correct, sir. But usme, if you look at last year, the individual 80 percentile in DILR was about 15 to 16 marks. This year, this paper we are saying it should be about 12 to 14 marks, right? Similarly, in VRC, the individual 80th percentile was about 24 marks. This year, we are saying it is about a question tougher in VRC also. And Quant is more or less going to remain the same. So, I guess it should be 3 to 5 marks lower at all percentile levels as compared to last year.
English, I am not fully sure whether at 80 percentile, मुझे लगता है कि score should be pretty similar. अगर 23-24 था last time, I would stick my neck out and say 80 percentile will remain same. Because 2 easy passages were there, parajumbles were there to score. So I think people would get that level. 99 लाने के लिए शायद tough था because you have to then crack the more difficult passages. But entry level in RC English was a very easy field section. Overall, अगर पेपर की बात करें, English was a very easy go section. There was no pressure in English throughout the journey. So I would say that 80 percentile would not go down in VARC.
So I think about 24, 25-ish.
I would suggest so.
Right. So I think that's what we have in store for today for the slot 3 analysis. Don't go anywhere. In 45 minutes from now, we will be doing a comprehensive analysis of CAT 2022, where we will be clubbing all the 3 slots, CAT slot 1, slot 2, and slot 3, and compare each of the slots section wise and then see what the overall picture is going to be. Though you may have attended a slot 1 analysis or a slot 2 analysis or a slot 3 analysis, when we put all the data together on one slide, then it will be easier for us to give you a better picture of what happened in CAT this year and where is it that exactly you may expect that kind of score versus percentile mapping. Till then, have dinner, चाय पीते होंगे तो चाय पी लो, जो भी पीना है पी लो, कैट खत्म हो गया है, and join us back at 9:30. I hope Shivku sir reaches home by that time. Right, sir. Chal. All the best, guys. See you at 9:30.